Did you know your credit card points and miles can lose value to inflation? Credit card companies often reduce the redemption value of your points and miles. Now, imagine a credit card with rewards that can grow in value. With the Gemini credit card, you can earn Bitcoin or one of over 50 other cryptos instantly with no annual fee. Every swipe at the store or gas pump earns you instant rewards deposited straight to your account. Plus, sign up now for a $200 Bitcoin bonus to kickstart your rewards. Visit Gemini.com/card today. Check out the link in the description for more information on rates and fees. Again, if you're looking to invest in Bitcoin but don't know where to start, the Gemini credit card makes it easy.
Breaking down every game, every day in Major League Baseball. This is the Baseball Betting Show. Here is your host, Greg Peterson.
Hey, warmer from the low. Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for the Baseball Betting Show with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. We've got an excellent podcast for you as we're going to be joined in segment number 2 by one of our good friends as we're going to be taking a look at these Wednesday baseball games with Rob Donaldson. He does great work with the show/podcast, Rob's Best Bets. We're going to take a look at how he gauges the teams with the bye in the wild card as well. We're going to have a lot of fun with him because we have had just an amazing day of baseball thus far as I do this Tuesday night, and this is going to be a wild and crazy postseason. We got a taste of it on Tuesday, so we'll recap those results here in the first segment. In the final segment, going to get you guys picks and analysis on all 4 games on the betting board for this Wild Card Wednesday as we touch them all. And if you do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of 2 ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at @GUnit_81. Keep in mind, letters EM. Naming does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. The other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. And then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. While I did not get in any Twitter/X questions today, everything is powered by EdgeBoost. EdgeBoost is making sure that bettors are able to have access to their funds whenever and wherever. With EdgeBoost, 100% of gambling transactions do get approved, and when you go to EdgeBoost.bet, make sure you put in that promo code of Greg, G-R-E-G. That gets you a $1 match on your first deposit up to $25. Now let's take a look back at everything that we saw in baseball on Tuesday. Try to find some trends and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
The day started off very underwhelming as the Tigers take down the Cleveland Guardians just by kind of 2-1 as Gavin Williams, he takes a loss, but he really didn't deserve this one. 2 errors out there in the field by Mr. Rodriguez and John Kenzie Noel costed him 2 unearned runs given up in 6 innings. From there, Hunter Gaddis, Eric Sabrowski combined for 2 scoreless innings. Cade Smith was able to lend a scoreless ninth, and Drake Skubal, he was just on it in this one. 7 2/3 innings, he allows 1 run, and the 1 run that he gave up was on an infield single, of course, to him. So there was that aspect of things. Skubal needs to brush up on the fielding a little bit, but that's a really good start there. And then Will Vest, he gets out of the 9th inning, gets a final 4-out scoreless as you had Jose Ramirez on third base with 1 out in the 9th inning. He charges home, he gets thrown out, and that was the difference in the game. So Guardians let go of a chance there. They're now down 1-0, and the Padres are down 1-0 as well. The Chicago Cubs get the job done by a count of 3-1. Cubs did get down early in this game by a count of 1-0, but a pair of home runs were able to claw them back as Carson Kelly and Seiya Suzuki go deep off of Nick Pivetta in the 5th inning. For Pivetta, finishes off 5 innings, 9 strikeouts, but gives up those 2 solo home runs. From there, bullpen was pretty solid. Jeremiah Estrada does give up a run in 2/3 of an inning. Wani Peralta in out of the bullpen scoreless. Adrian Morejon, Mason Miller, they both ended scoreless inning, and Matthew Boyd did allow a run early on in this game, but finishes 4 1/3 innings, giving up that 1 run. Bullpen from there does their part. Drew Pomeranz, Andrew Kittredge, Brad Keller, all ended scoreless inning. Daniel Palencia, 5 outside the bullpen scoreless. The lone underdog of the day that was able to cash was the Boston Red Sox. 3-1, they take it to the New York Yankees. Max Fried had a really nice start, 6 1/3 innings scoreless, got out of a jam or 2 as the Red Sox would leave 10 men on base, but Garrett Crochet lent a lot of length, 7 2/3 innings. He did allow a solo home run early on in the game in the 2nd inning to Anthony Volpe, but from there he was rock solid. Aroldis Chapman, 4 outs out of the bullpen, did allow 3 hits, but was able to strand all of those guys on as Luke Weaver was the guy that really gave it up for the Yankees. Came in the 7th inning, allowed 2 runs without getting a single out. Fernando Cruz got a pair of outs out of the bullpen in the 7th inning. Devin Williams Williams a scoreless setting, and then David Benner does allow a run in the ninth inning as the Red Sox had Alex Bregman hit a double to be able to lend some insurance, and that gave us 3 unders on the night. And the lone over, that would be out there in Los Angeles. The Dodgers, they take it to the Cincinnati Reds by a count of 10-4. Credit to the Reds, who were able to put up 5 runs in the 7th and 8th innings to be able to make it competitive, but Hunter Green just did not have it in this one. 3 innings pitch allows 5 runs, all of which were earned, including a trio of bombs, as you did have Teoscar Hernandez go deep off of him, Shohei Ohtani went deep off of him, and Tommy Edman did as well. And Ohtani and Hernandez, they also went deep off of Connor Phillips. He allows 3 runs in an inning, including 2 home runs. Scott Barlow got 5 outside the bullpen scoreless. Brent Suter, 2 runs, 1 of which was earned in his 4 outside the bullpen. Graham Ashcraft was out a load of Ashcraft. He was able to end a scoreless inning, and for Blake Snell, relatively good start here and good length. 7 innings. He does punch out 9, gives up 2 runs along the way. Alex Vesia did allow 2 runs in a third of an inning, and you had Edgar Enriquez not get a single out of the bullpen. He allowed a run, but Jack Dreher cleaned up the mess. He got a pair of outside the bullpen scoreless, and then Blake Trinan, he was able to complete a scoreless 9th inning. So you did see on this day in baseball, the favorites go 3-1 on the money line, and you did see those favorites with regards to being able to cover the run line. 2 of them were able to cover. The Boston Red Sox were your lone underdog that cash, and lone over, that would be Dodgers versus Reds. So that's what we saw in baseball on Tuesday, and that's what we've got in terms of our playoff trends. Coming up next, how about if we do preview the Wednesday baseball games, take a look at how to gauge the teams with the buys, if there's any futures worth betting right now, and so much more with Rob Donaldson, who does great work with the show/podcast Rob's Best Bets. On the flip side, here on the Baseball Betting Show with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the Beast and Family Podcast.
Breaking down every game, every day in Major League Baseball, this is the Baseball Betting Show. Here is your host, Greg Peterson.
And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for the Baseball Betting Show with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by this man, as Rob Donaldson does such great work over at the show/podcast Rob's Best Bets, handicapping a little bit of everything. He does a tremendous job with regards to the baseball front, the college basketball front, and so much more. You're able to find all of his work on the old Twitter/X at RobDFB altogether. And Rob, it's always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me on, Greg. And my goodness, man, it's been a long season, but we finally made it to the playoffs, and I'm so excited. This is a wide open field, a lot of really great angles, and on night number 1, it served me really well. So I'm just here happy to be talking with you about baseball.
Yep, absolutely. And I do think that it's going to be a lot of fun to see what we get here in the next few days as the wild card games. We are doing this as we don't know the final of that final game between the Reds and the Dodgers because it went off so late, but just what do you see from the first few games? Because I think it's exactly what a lot of people were thinking, that this was going to line up to be a lot of low scoring slogs.
Yeah, and I think in particular that Tigers Guardians game with Tariq Skubal and Gavin Williams on the bump, 2 guys who have just been absolutely dealing for pretty much the entire season. That was one that I think was a very, very obvious under, but the Padres Cubs was one that I think just kind of speaks to their season, where they've kind of been an anemic offense, and it showed up against a guy that I think that is really having issues right now.
No, absolutely. I think that he is certainly having a lot of issues. And man, for the Cleveland Guardians to lose a game where you give up 0 earned runs, that's just absolutely brutal. And I think that Cubs versus Padres game number 2 is so interesting to take a look at right now, because right now the Cubs are like a -110, -115 favorite, and Andrew Kittredge is going to be the opener in this one. I would have to think Shota Imanaga comes in bulk relief. I am not sure, though. That was not announced going against Dylan Cease. How do you take a look at this one, and do you think that it will indeed be Shota Imanaga in bulk relief? Because I just couldn't see them using an opener for someone like James Zion.
Yeah, and it almost kind of feels like the Cubs might be saying, hey, waste your Dylan Cease bullet, but the way that Dylan Cease is playing is almost like, don't you want to take advantage of him during his starts? Him and Yu Darvish are obviously very susceptible, but if that really is the case, where there's not a crazy difference between the Padres number 2 and the Padres number 3, why not go after it and try to finish off the series tomorrow? That one kind of feels a little bit odd to me, and so to your point, I do think Shota Imanaga will get introduced relatively early there, if that is in fact the strategy, but ultimately, the Padres look anemic, and I think with the Padres all season long, that offense has been an issue, and even after the trade deadline, with all these pieces that they've added in, Freddie Fermin, Ryan O'Hearn, it just still hasn't culminated to consistent offense. And I don't know what's going to take for the Padres at this point. They might just be having the death nail in their season because these stars, this star-studded lineup, this big name lineup, just can't get it done. But ultimately, I think if the Padres are going to win one, it's in a game where the Cubs aren't putting their best foot forward. And for that reason, I am going to take another shot here with the Padres. It's just not my favorite bet on the money line board here tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think that it's going to be very, very fascinating to see what we get in terms of that game. And when it comes to Padres versus Cubs, that might be the hardest game to call. And then what we're going to be able to get out of Guardians versus Tigers is so interesting as well, because the Tigers are right now down in this series 1-0, as I alluded to, without having given up an earned run. Tanner Bybee against Casey Mize, totals between 6.5 and 7. And the Cleveland Guardians are about a -120 or so money line. How do you take a look at this one, especially with the fact that the Tigers really didn't throw anyone out of their bullpen aside from Will Vest? But for Tanner Bybee, even though he has had a season that's not up to his standards, he really comes in pitching some of his best all season.
Yeah, I think you nailed it with that last point, where if you look at that surface level ERA, almost the reverse, or the inverse rather, of Matthew Boyd, who was coming in with a 3.21 ERA, pitching his worst ball of the season. Bybee is pitching his best ball of the season right now for the Guardians. And on the other side with Casey Mize, he has dodged a lot of bullets as of late, and yes, he has paid for him on occasion as well, but ultimately what I think really showed its head is that the Tigers still are really, really struggling with runners in scoring position because, yeah, they did win that game 1, but they left a lot of opportunities on the base pass, which, again, is eventually going to come back to bite them, you would have to think, especially with Jose Ramirez leading off with a triple in the bottom of the 9th. It was almost like the Tigers, oh, here we go again, wasting a Tariq Skubal start. But I do think the Guardians are going to be able to win this game here on Wednesday, and I think it's going to be one of those games that ultimately isn't a total blowout because I don't think the Guardians can score that many runs, but it's going to feel like a game where the Guardians are in control from start to finish. And for that reason, I like the full game money line. I also like a first 5 money line, but the full game market is ultimately where I'm targeting here.
Yeah, but I think that that's a smart way to be able to go as well, and I do think that that is going to be a lot of fun to be taking a look at. As Casey Mize, he himself, 3 runs or fewer allowed in each out of his last 5 starts, and just when you take a look at this Guardians versus Detroit Tigers series, just how much you take a look at the lack of offense that we've seen from the Guardians, not just this year, but in past years as well, because it feels like the one thing we've been able to bank on in the postseason last few years, since the Guardians, they just seem to get here time and time again, is that essentially all their games seem to go under.
Yeah, and I mean, this isn't kind of a foreign concept to the Guardians even this season because, yes, they're coming into the playoffs playing some of the best ball in Major League Baseball, arguably the best ball in Major League Baseball, but just a few months ago, they had a 45-game stretch of averaging 1.8 runs per game. I mean, ultimately, you can improve off of that number, but that number still carries weight, right? It's still indicative of something that can happen, especially when the stakes are highest. And so from that standpoint, again, I do feel like the Guardians are going to win. As far as their longevity in this series and also their longevity in the playoffs, I do kind of wonder whether or not the Guardians are kind of a one and done style of team because eventually that offense is going to kind of rear its ugly head when the stakes are at its most.
Yep, absolutely, and I do think that that is going to be very fascinating to take a look at. As Rob Donaldson, who does great work with the show/podcast Rob's Best Bets, joining me on the Baseball Betting Show. Now, we're doing this as we don't have numbers up for Yankees, Red Sox, and Dodgers versus Reds, mainly because they don't put up openers until the game is finished for the sake of the playoffs. Typically, you get overnights with regards to Major League Baseball before the games finish up, not when it comes to the playoffs. But what are you taking a look at in terms of that Reds versus Dodgers game? Because I did back the Reds in game number 1 as of right now. I don't know whether that was a great move or a bad move. We shall see what happens there, but I take a look at this spot in game number 2, and for the Dodgers, I think I'd be willing to lay like a -120, -125 run line here because Yoshinobu Yamamoto comes in great form, and I just have zero faith in Zach Littell in this start.
Yeah, I'm actually right there with you with back and Hunter Green. I'm particularly right in the first 5 money line for the Reds here on Tuesday, so knock on wood, hopefully that goes well for us, but I do feel like on Tuesday, that's the one crack that the Reds have to kind of draw blood in this series because the rest of the way, I think they're kind of dead in the water. And ultimately, it's because The Reds offense is kind of anemic. It's been kind of average all season long, and it really didn't change during this stretch run to get them into the playoffs. It was just a matter of actually the Mets kind of free falling themselves out of the playoff picture rather than the Reds just ascending past and leaving no doubt. And I think to your point, Zach Littell, it's one of those things where he's a very good average starter, almost like the Lance Lynn effect of, hey, he's a great number 3. You can throw him out there and feel like you have a chance to win. But against the Dodgers lineup that theoretically could be coming off of a loss or just a bad performance in general against Hunter Green, I feel like Zach Littell is the guy who's going to end up getting kind of teed off on. And I do like the Dodgers on the run line through the first 5 innings and through the full game, but in particular through that first 5. And I think even taking some batter props on the Dodgers side is a really good look in that matchup.
Yep, I think so too. And I think that with the LA Dodgers, they certainly should be able to get to Littell. If the Reds win game number 1, that'll set up a great game 3. If Hunter Green is unable to get the job done, well, that series is going to be over, in my opinion. Then I do think the most interesting matchup might actually be Red Sox versus Yankees, because Brian Bayo has been rock solid this year, but he does pitch to a lot of contact. And Carlos Rodon, he comes in pitching some of his best baseball of the season. Again, we don't have any numbers up on this game, but how are you taking a look at this Red Sox-Yankees game with both Garrett Crochet and Max Fried giving good starts in game number 1 to keep both of these bullpens relatively fresh?
Well, you know, when we're talking about the Tigers and Guardians and Padres and Cubs on Tuesday, we might be talking about low-scoring affairs, and that's kind of the thing that kind of runs throughout every single playoff cycle, especially in the wild card round, is, you know, there's kind of those like individual games that have that offensive explosion, but in totality, a lot of unders. And when you're looking at a Red Sox-Yankees with Rodon, Bayo, that's one of those games that I think we could actually see some fireworks, because Rodon, he's been pitching actually, I think, some of his worst ball of the season coming in, and not notably in terms of runs allowed on the surface, but those hard hits are really starting to pile up. And when you are looking at the Red Sox potentially even being down 0-1 in this series and having a ton of right-handed bats that are hitting baseballs hard right now, I feel like Rodon's going to be in trouble. And so ultimately, the way I'm taking a look at that game is the Red Sox team total full game over. And I'm also looking at the Red Sox money line. I think Bayo could run into some issues himself as well, but I think ultimately whatever issues he runs into, Rodon might even get double up or 2x in terms of those runs given up. So that's kind of the angle I'm looking at there. A lot of Red Sox team total overs and also just them on the money line outright there.
Yep, absolutely. And I do think that it's going to be very interesting to see what we're all going to be getting in terms of that game. And with regards to the Red Sox, would you rather be looking at, shall we say, a little bit more of the full game with them? Because I think that one of their biggest strengths with regards to the series against the New York Yankees is that the Yankees bullpen has been so bad. Meanwhile, the Red Sox, they really have been amazing in that bullpen. And if they're able to get it to Roldis Chapman in the 9th inning, he's been the best reliever in all baseball this year.
100%. I think that's the ultimate point in terms of taking the full game over on the Red Sox team total and also them on the money line, because yes, I do think they do damage against Rodon early, but eventually they're going to be able to get the ball to potentially Roldis Chapman, who is one of the ultimate closers right now in the sport. I think he's the best closer in all of baseball at this point in time, which is crazy that we're turning the clock back that much, but it's the reality. And I do think that when you're back in the Red Sox and looking at these angles, if you're not taking into account the fact that the Yankees bullpen has seen so many implosions and that the Red Sox potentially could even have a leg up through the first 5 innings, 100% you take a shot on the Red Sox, where presumably they're actually going to be getting a plus number or even a pick-em price. And for that reason, 100% I'm on those Red Sox.
Yes, absolutely. And we've hit upon the 4 wildcard games that we've got for Wednesday. We shall see if we get any game 3s. But just with regards to the teams that are on bye, how do you think you're going to be gauging them moving forward? Because obviously there's a lot of TBD in the air. But ever since we went to this expanded wildcard format, we have seen a lot of the teams with a bye really struggle. Sans the Dodgers last year, it's almost been a little bit of a curse to have the bye. And with things being so, shall we say, equal in baseball this year, I do think that the teams coming in with momentum and winning these wildcard rounds can really make a deep run and perhaps be able to throw the teams that had the best record and did get these byes.
And ultimately, what we've kind of seen is the teams that struggle to score runs in that second round are the teams that end up kind of having the worst chance in terms of the teams that have a bye. Notably, I'm looking at the Mariners, because although their offense did step up near the back half of the season, there were still some really large pockets of time where they just flat out struggled and looked almost flat out anemic when it comes to, runners in scoring position. I think they had 2 or 3 games in a row that went 13, 14, and 15 innings just because they couldn't get a run across, not because the other team was mashing them on the other side. And I feel like even with the Tigers and Guardians coming out of that matchup, having to face the Mariners, and again, 2 offenses that have kind of been sputtering in their own right, sometimes when you're in those low-scoring affairs and you're the team that also has been off for maybe an entire week, all of a sudden a team like the Mariners, I think, could get picked off very, very early by a team that, to your point, is coming in hot after playing a playoff series. So that's one of those teams and one of those matchups that I'm definitely going to be eyeing, because I don't know if the Mariners are going to be long for the playoff cycle here.
Yeah, and I do think that that's a really good look by you. And with regards to this postseason as well, did you take any shots on futures, or are you a little bit more like myself, going a bit more game to game? Because I even think series prices, especially when you have a 3-game series in the wild card, it's just really hard to pick off a series price there. But is there anything that you took a look at on the futures, or are you going a little bit more game to game with how equal things are? And let's call it what it is, not really a lot of long shots on the board for this postseason.
Yeah, no, to your point, very, very game by game in the wild card. I'm not even placing series to win bet or win series bets until we get to the next round. Once we get to that division round, I will 100% again be betting on either the Tigers or the Guardians, assuming they're at full strength going into that Mariners series, because I do think that's a really good look. I'm also probably going to be taking a chance on the Phillies if it is the Dodgers advancing to that division round as well, because I just think the Phillies are much better equipped on the back end of games than the Dodgers or the Reds in that particular matchup. So those are going to be some futures that I end up placing in the division round, but as of right now, kind of holding pat and just betting game by game individually.
I think that that's such a great way to go about it. And Rob, I know you're doing an amazing job taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of baseball. You're getting set for what is going to be an incredible college basketball season and so much more. So let the good people at home know what's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Well, hey, Greg, man, we've been talking about baseball on your podcast all the way dating back to, I think, February or even like early March. And my goodness, man, here we are about to turn the calendar into October. And it really does feel like October baseball is here. We've already had some really great games. We're already seeing the studs go out there and do their thing. And I'm excited for how this playoff cycle ends up here. But for those who want to follow my bets throughout the playoffs, Twitter/X at RobDFB, and also my YouTube channel, which is just my name, Rob Donaldson. But as always, Greg, I appreciate having me on, man.
Absolutely. Rob is doing an incredible job taking a look at this great game of baseball, and every single time he joins me, lends such great insights. So big thanks to Rob for joining me on the Baseball Betting Show, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. And coming next, it is that time of the podcast. They give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this Baseball Wednesday as we touch them all.
Breaking down every game, every day in Major League Baseball. This is the Baseball Betting Show. Here is your host, Greg Peterson.
And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for the Baseball Betting Show with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by Rob Donaldson, who does such amazing work with the show/podcast, Rob's Best Bets. Every single time he joins me, he lends such great insights, and he did so once again today. So a big thanks to Rob for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this Baseball Wednesday as we touch them all.
If a game is listed on the betting board, Greg has a side and a total on it, so it is time to touch them all.
Do note that as per usual, any changes I made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at GUnit_E1. Very easy to go in Las Vegas rotation order today because we are going to be going in time order. So we're going to start out with that Tigers-Guardians game and then Padres-Cubs, Red Sox-Yankees, and Reds-Dodgers. So let's get things started with 901, 902 on the card. The Detroit Tigers are on the road facing off against the Cleveland Guardians. Tanner Bybee goes for Cleveland. Casey Mize is on the bump for Detroit. Detroit does find themselves between even money and plus 110, right around minus 120 to minus 125. Then they're on Cleveland with a total of 7. Unders between minus 120 to a minus 125. Overs between even and plus 105. And with the Guardians, I set them at a minus 117. So if we could get this to slither on down to like a minus 118, which when it's all said and done, I do think that it does, I will be willing to take a shot there. If you're looking to lay a run and a half on the run line, you're actually able to get like a plus 185 right now. And I was willing to go in at a plus 183 or better. So I'm in some form or capacity going to be looking at the Guardians. I do think that I'll be able to get that money line when it's all said and done. For Casey Mize, he does come in pretty rock solid form. 3 runs or fewer allowed in each out of his last 5 starts, and he's been pretty solid in terms of not hurting himself thus far this season. For Casey Mize, he's only giving up about 2.2 or so walks per 9 innings. His home runs per 9 rate hovering in that neighborhood about 1.1. He's not necessarily a strikeout artist, but he's up to about 8.3, 8.4 strikeouts per 9 innings with a 3.87 ERA. And for Tanner Bybee, well, the ERA overall for the season is 4.24, fielding dependent of a 4.34 with 1.3 home runs allowed per 9 innings. He enters in really good form. 4 runs allowed over the course of his last 4 starts, and his ERA drops to a 3.22 at home. He's allowing just 0.8 home runs per 9 innings at home, and for the Tigers team, they've been in the bottom 10 in the big leagues in terms of run creation ever since the beginning of the month of September. He saw a really good average on this team, as Riley Green has been able to supply you with 35 home runs. He's been able to over a 260 thus far this season, and likes of Wencio Perez, along with Gleyber Torres, Javi Baez, a lot of guys hanging in that neighborhood of like 245 to 270. Dylan Dingler has done a great job in terms of moving the line as well, but for the Tigers, they just don't have quite the same bullpen that the Cleveland Guardians have. Guardians number 2 in the big leagues in terms of bullpen ERA. You've had the likes of Eric Zabrowski, Cade Smith, Hunter Gaddis, all be able to give you a sub 3.35 ERA. Those guys did get used yesterday, but all for fewer than 20 pitches, so it's going to be all hands on deck in game number 2. If you need to go to him, you've got a guy like a Jacob Junis, who's been a relatively good long guy. And for the Tigers, much of the bullpen was saved yesterday. They only used Will Vest, so they should be good to rock and roll there. You've got the likes of Kyle Finnegan, along with Troy Melton, who have been able to give you a sub 3.25 ERA. Bryant Herter has been rock solid for his team throughout the season as well, so they should be able to do a nice job in terms of being able to mix and match with regards to that bullpen. And for the Cleveland Guardians, the big thing is just finding a way to be able to create some runs, as they have been in the bottom 3 in the big leagues in terms of run creation at home thus far this season. Jose Ramirez, even though he ran home a little bit foolishly on Tuesday, he's been your main guy. 30 home runs, about a 350 on base. And then Kyle Manzardo, 27 plus home runs, only hits for about a 235, but moves the line. And then Stephen Kwan getting a 275 at the top has been good, but you do have so many guys on this roster like CJ Kafis, Daniel Schneemann, John Kensley Noel, Austin Hedges. You go down the list of guys that are hitting below a 225. It is pretty rampant, so I think that you're going to get another lower scoring game. So by total 6.8, so on that 7, I like the under. And for the Guardians, think that when it's all said and done, I should be able to get a minus 117 or better, so going to be looking at that money line. 903, 904 on the card. It is the San Diego Padres. They're on the road. They're facing off against the Chicago Cubs. Andrew Kittredge will get the start for the Cubs, expected to be Shota Imanaga as a bulk guy after him. Meanwhile, Dylan Cease is going to be going for the San Diego Padres. Right now with the Cubs, you'll find them between minus 110 to a minus 115. Right around even money to minus 105 is Zenobra on the Padres, with a total between 6.5 and 7 on the 6.5. Over is minus 125, under is plus 105 on the 7. Under is minus 110 to minus 120. Over is between even and minus 110. Did set my total at 7.4. I'm going to be looking at the over. This is going to be a case where the wind is going to be blowing quite a bit more out than it was on Tuesday. Now, it's going to be a little bit more directional wind. It might be blowing out just a skoge, and then towards back half of the game, it might be blowing in a little bit more, so it might be switching directions as the game is going along. But, I mean, you're going to have like a high of 70 on this day, so it's not the world's worst conditions considering it's October 1st out there in the lovely state of Illinois. And you do have a few guys that have just been struggling on the mound this year. Shota Imanaga, at least 3 runs allowed at each out of his last 6 starts. He's been giving up about 1.7 home runs per 9 innings. Again, assuming that he is going to be the bulk guy. I say this as an insert because it was revealed after I recorded this initially that is going to be Andrew Kittredge as the opener, but it does make sense if that is indeed the case, as Shota Imanaga has a 7.20 ERA in the first inning thus far this season, and the righty-lefty splits do sort of favor starting Andrew Kittredge in this ordeal. Now for the Padres, they are 23rd in runs scoring on the road this year, only averaging about 4.2 runs per game, but for the Padres, they did a nice job revamping at the trade deadline, bringing in Ryan O'Hearn and Ramon Laureano. A pair of guys are able to give you north of a 340 on base, double-figure amount of homers for both of those guys. Obviously, Manny Machado and Fernando Tatis Jr. have been your main mashers, combined 52 home runs for them during the regular season, both hitting above a 265. Gavin Sheets has been able to supply 20 bombs, and Jake Cronenworth moves the line, 370 on base. And I mean, towards the end of the regular season, on the regular, the Padres were trotting out there pretty much either 8 or 9 guys hitting at least a 250. So they do a nice job in terms of getting on base. Not necessarily such a great job in terms of deep ball, bottom 5 in the big leagues in terms of home runs on a per at-bat basis. And for the Padres, they are number 1 in the big leagues in terms of bullpen ERA, a sub 3.1 ERA during the regular season. So many guys like Jason Adam, Adrian Martejón, Mason Miller, David Morgan, who have all been able to give you a sub 3.25 ERA. they had to use up Wandy Peralta yesterday, but he's been relatively solid as well. And when it comes to the San Diego Padres and what you're able to get out of Dylan Cease, it's been a rough season for him if you look at the ERA at a 4.55. Fielding independent is a full point lower, though, as he has only given up 1.1 home runs per 9, and he's still getting the 11.5 strikeouts per 9. Now, the 3.8 walks per 9, yeah, that has been a little bit less than savory, to say the least, and his ERA does go up to about a 5.58 on the road, but still only gives up about 1.1 home runs per 9 innings when he is on the road. And when it comes to the Chicago Cubs, this has been a bullpen that has been pretty rock solid. They did use up a lot of their guys yesterday, but again, all for 17 pitches or fewer. Drew Pomeranz, Andrew Kittredge, Brad Keller, Daniel Palencia, all these guys have a sub 3.50 ERA in a Cubs uniform thus far this season, so I think that they're going to be relatively fine there. And for the Cubs, you have noticed these guys being able to find their swagger back. Michael Busch, 34 home runs. He's up to about a 340 on base. Nico Horner, second half of the season, hit well above a 300. He had multiple hits yesterday. Seiya Suzuki, he's been able to give you like 3 home runs in the last 5 games. You've got Kyle Tucker back off the injury list. Pete Armstrong, 30-plus home runs during the regular season now. 3 strikeouts and 3 at-bats yesterday. Not great, but even Matt Shaw has really improved his play as well. So I do think that with the Cubs, they do find a way to be able to get to Dylan Cease and do just enough on that bullpen to get the job done. Willing to lay up to a -110 on the Cubs on the money line, and did set my total at 7.4. So here at the 7, I'm going to be looking at the over. 9:45, 9:46 on the card. Now, I do have to do this as the game is off the board, because when it comes to these wild card games, you don't get numbers up until after the game is concluded. And with the last 2 games, they did come onto the board very late, but the Red Sox are on the road against the New York Yankees. Carlos Rodon is on the bump for the Yankees. Brian Bayo goes for the Red Sox. With my money line, I'm willing to lay up to a -163 with the Yankees, plus 165 or better. Looking at the Red Sox, and then circumstance where a 7.5 or less, I'll be in on the over. In 8 or higher, I'm going to be liking this total under with Brian Bayo. 3.35 ERA, despite only getting 6.7 strikeouts per 9 innings, has been allowing 3 walks per 9, so that's a little bit of a concern. Have to face off against a Yankees team that is averaging 5.2 runs per game. That is number 1 in all baseball, number 1 in terms of home runs on a per at-bat basis. And for Carlos Rodon, he comes in really good form. He has given up 2 runs or fewer in now 8 out of his last 9 starts, with giving up 3 runs in his last start of the regular season. So he's been able to do a nice job rocking and rolling there. But you do have a Red Sox lineup that is in the top 8 in the big leagues in terms of their overall run creation, despite the fact that the home run power hasn't necessarily been massive for them. Tyler Abreu, Trevor Story, lone 2 guys on the roster with above 18 home runs. With Abreu, he's been hitting about a 250, along Jarren Duran hitting a 255. Ceddanne Rafael is hitting about a 250. A lot of guys in that neighborhood. They picked up Nathan Lowe towards back half of the season, and he hasn't provided a lot of power for them, but he's been able to find a way to be able to get on base. Alex Bregman, he hasn't supplied as much power as you'd expect, 18 home runs this season, but still give you a 360 on base. Rob Snyder, Rami Gonzalez, guys like this have done a nice job in terms of finding a way to be able to get on base. And then for the Yankees, you just have all sorts of power. Aaron Judge, obviously, with the 455 on base and 53 home runs, that leads the way. But how about Trent Grisham, Cody Bellinger, both being able to give 29 plus home runs? They are dealing with the Jazz Chisholm injury, and you do have Anthony Volpe and Austin Wells. Both of these guys have combined 40 home runs, but both hitting below a 220 during the regular season, both below a 280 with regards to the on base. That is a little bit of an issue, but Giancarlo Stanton giving you a home run every about 10.5 or so at bats. That's pretty rock solid. But the big thing for the Red Sox that can keep them lively in this game, they've got the better bullpen. For the Red Sox, they've been in the top 6 in the big leagues in terms of bullpen ERA all season long, and Aroldis Chapman has obviously been amazing. Top closer in all of baseball, getting like 12.5 strikeouts with a 1.25 ERA. But I mean, it's more than just him. You've got the likes of Greg Weiser, Garrett Woodlock. They're throwing Peyton Tolley out of the bullpen now as well. You've had really good production out of Justin Slayton. Pretty much all these guys, aside from Tolley, have been able to give you a sub 350 ERA. And for the New York Yankees, since the beginning of the month of July, they do rank in the bottom 6 in the big leagues in terms of bullpen ERA. Since they came off the injury list, the likes of Yuri De Los Santos along Luke Weaver have just not been themselves. De Los Santos has been so rough that they just left him off the playoff roster in general. Devin Williams, he's still on it, but he's been giving you a 5 ERA. Mark Leiter Jr. has been getting lighted up. Camilo Duvall has been a little bit of a disappointment since coming to town. David Bednar has been able to do a relatively solid job, so they're very much going to be relying upon Carlos Rodon, who has been very rock solid thus far this season. 309 ERA, but 3.4 walks allowed per 9 innings, a 378 fielding independent, and being backed up by the bullpen. Do want to be a little bit cautious there. If I'm able to get a plus 165 or better, I'll be looking at the Red Sox. Minus 163 or better, looking at the Yankees, so I'd probably take a look at a run line of a plus 126 or higher, and then 7.5 or less, like the over, 8 or higher, the under. And we wrap things up with 947, 948 on the card. Dodgers play host to the Reds. Zach Littell goes for the Reds. Yoshinobu Yamamoto is on the bump for the Dodgers. Right now, as I said, this is a late game, so we're not going to get openers in a lot of cases until until you wake up in the AM. But that said, if I can get the Dodgers at a minus 125 or better on the run line, we'll be looking there. I would need at least a plus 259 to take a shot on the Reds, and then did so I told us 7.8. 7.5 or less, I'll be in on the over, and 8 or higher to the under. And for Littell, if you look at the overall ERA, it's not the world's worst this year, a 3.81 ERA, but 4.88 fielding dependent because he has really given up the deep ball. 1.7 home runs allowed per 9 innings. He's only getting 6.3 strikeouts per 9. I will say, less than 2 walks per 9 innings. That's pretty rock solid, but that said, you've also got a Cincinnati Reds bullpen that has been very shaky throughout the season. With having Emilio Pagan out there, he's been able to give you a sub-3 ERA, but that said, he's also given up the deep ball quite a bit. Tony Santillan has been rock solid, but now you're looking at guys like a Nick Martinez, Scott Barlow, who have above a 3.75 ERA in that bullpen, so that could be a little bit of a roll of the dice. And for lack of a better term, the Cincinnati Reds lineup is just very, very mid, because you've got Spencer Steer and Ellie De La Cruz, who have both been able to give you 20-plus home runs. Nobody else in that starting lineup on Tuesday with over 15 home runs, and a lot of guys that just aren't hitting for a lot of average. Brian Hayes, Tyler Stevenson, Matt McClain, all hitting a 235 or lower for the season without necessarily great on-base percentage. Miguel Andujar has been able to hit above a 300, that's rock solid. And then you do have the likes of Gavin Lux, TJ Friedel, who do find a way to be able to move the line, but for the LA Dodgers, 5.5 runs per game at home this season, number 1 in all baseball. Shohei Ohtani just continues to do Shohei Ohtani things, give you over a 380 on base, 55 home runs. He has been absolutely excellent. And Mookie Betts, since the All-Star break, hitting above a 275, he's been able to find his swagger. Getting back Max Muncy has been so big when he's out of the lineup. The Dodgers' run creation typically drops by about a full run and a half. Andy Paz has been rock solid, 27 home runs. The biggest issue that you do have with the Dodgers is the bullpen, because you've had a lot of injuries with it all throughout the season. Kirby Yates is back on the injured list, which that's not necessarily the world's biggest loss, because he was posting up an ERA above a 4. You've got Tanner Scott and Blake Trienbeck, but neither of these guys have necessarily been amazing. A guy like Justin Robelski as a long guy has actually been pretty rock solid, but I think that they are just going to very much be trusting in Yoshinobu Yamamoto, who's been putting up a 2.49 ERA, and he comes in really, really good form. For Yamamoto, he has given up a combined 3 runs over the course of his last 5 starts, 7+ strikeouts in every one of those starts as well. He did give up a few walks in his start against the San Francisco Giants, but all in all, this guy has been able to do a very rock solid job of keeping the ball in the yard, only giving up 0.7 home runs per 9 innings with his 7.5 strikeouts per 9, so do think that the Dodgers should be able to go out there and give some relatively good domination. One to lay up to minus 125 with that Dodgers run line. We need at least plus 259 to take a shot on the Reds, and then 7.5 or less, I like the over, and 8 or higher to the under, and that'll wrap things up for the Wednesday edition of the Baseball Betting Show, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. Big thanks to Rob Donaldson, who does great work with the show/podcast, Rob's Best Bets. He joined me in the last segment. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Baseball Betting Show, you're able to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of 2 ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letters the me does not matter, so per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. And then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. I'll be with you guys every single day throughout the postseason here on this podcast, so I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.